Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. My name is Allison Pierre. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a former prosecutor, and I did commercial litigation. When I was practicing law, I truly enjoyed it, but I realized there was something meaningful missing, and the missing piece was I want to make impact. I created a data consulting firm called Innovative Prosecution Consulting. What we do is we have a data team and we partner with prosecutor offices from around the nation. The reason I decided to create a data consulting firm was because I knew that to really make change in the criminal justice system to address the challenges of the cost of the system, the unfairness, data is a part of that solution. The other part of my mission is to uplift other organizations that are doing meaningful work, looking at alternatives to incarceration. And that's why I am extremely grateful to have Pathways to True Freedom to lift up. And what we're going to do is introduce the members here that are on our panel. And then we're going to get into particular topics and we'll conclude. So let's start with Pathways to True Freedom. I would like to introduce DeVord Allen. Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us about yourself and your organization.
All right, I'm DeVord J. Allen. I'm the co-founder of Pathways to True Freedom Foundation. And our organization was founded in 2018, but began off the ground in about 2020. And the work that we began doing was in BIPOC communities for reintegration and returning citizens. And so my background directly is a community health worker, author, director of peer support services, also certified peer support specialist. It kind of aligned with the values of the company. And so we began really working and getting out in the field to see what was going on. Why are these barriers still prevalent? You know, there were some initiatives taking place. We have some great stakeholders here who have done work, second chance work, but unfortunately, we were still seeing a large amount of people not be able to receive from those removal barriers or limited barriers.
Now let's introduce Robert Green. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Shamika.
I'm Robert Green. I'm actually one of the board's mentees. Currently re-entering the world from prison. I just got released in December last year. So, um, yeah, just working on my life right now and trying to do things better.
Thank you, Robert. Your turn, Shamika.
Okay, hi, my name is Shamika Marshall, and currently I work for Minnesota Training Partnerships, where I actually help people just like you with having a passion to do the work, and then also with what I went through in my own personal life, but helping others who are incarcerated or justice impacted, is the way I like to say it, helping them to gain employment. So standing in the gap of those who also believe in having second chances. But I myself had went through a situation where I had to serve 65 days jail time. I lost my son. I lost my job and everything. And it was very hard to get back into the work field, but because of my record at the time. But doors were open for me, and I'm definitely very grateful for that. And it took me a long time to get back on my feet, but I'm here. So
You're here and you did it.
hmm
I want to honor both of you for what you're willing to share and what you've accomplished. I'm going to pivot back to you, DeVord. I want you to take me through, just in a very easy to understand way, what the programs that you offer are, and specifically expungement, and just explain to everyone what it means, and then a little bit about the expungement clinic.
Yeah. So back in 2022, we partnered with the Attorney General's office here in Minnesota. We began trying to ramp up the expungement process because it was really the only way that offenders or ex-offenders or returning citizens could have a chance to set the record or clear the record. And that doesn't mean that the record is wiped away or, it's forbeared. It just means that it's hidden from, say, a landlord or potential employer, which would allow that person to acquire a job, and we're not talking about surgeons or, higher paying sector jobs. We're just talking about the bare minimal jobs that people are being denied access to at a minimum wage, for say.
Understood. I also know that you probably have resources that you wish you would have that you don't. I would love to know the top 2 or 3 things that you really need to make the impact you want.
Okay, so for most of the men and a few women that the organizations have been founded to work with, what we're seeing is barriers to transportation. So something as simple as bus cards, bus tokens, or light rail. Most people returning, they don't have clothing. So how can you get someone to an interview if they don't have a proper attire or, a haircut or grooming access? There are numerous things that we find that are barriers or obstacles to being able to fully support someone. It could be just being able to have enough money to get back and forth to work, or a stipend that would allow them to be able to have a lunch, just it is a numerous of things that have affluent kind of take for granted.
And another part of that challenge is mental health and wellness, treatment programs.
Yes, so we currently work with people with co-occurring mental health conditions as well. I have I'm linked to a couple of practitioners, and they do work in BIPOC communities, working with people underserved, undiagnosed, oftentimes mental health issues. A lot of people returning from the systems are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. There are numerous things. I've had people sitting in groups who weren't able to participate in the group for periods of time because they're suffering from anxiety, from just being around a lot of people and not having the access while incarcerated or in treatments to adequate mental health services. So, yeah.
I want to make sure people understand what removal or barriers are and how to remove the barriers. And can you just spotlight for me a couple, like the top 3 challenges that are common?
Okay, so in order to really take you there and paint that narrative, I want to share something with you, Allison. In 1965, there were a host of legislative restorations for people of color, civil rights movement I'm speaking directly about. And in that, it promised non-discriminatory practices of people of color for housing, education, voting rights, and employment. With the exception of those enactments, fast forward to 2025, those discriminatory practices still exist, and they exist in the realm of convicted persons. So those are the people who now are still not able to receive or participate in those promised rights. And that's due solely to a mistake or a poor choice or situation of their past. And so the expungement process, I believe, is one of the most invaluable services that we can have next to a pardon that allows a person to get a clean slate and begin to move forward in their lives. And that's
clean slate. Does that mean their criminal record is sealed to the public?
That would mean that the particular faucets that we like to look at, employment, housing, the real barriers to getting people to moving forward and showing equity in their lives are sealed to people other than law enforcement. Let's just put it like that. So I think that is one of the most important avenues that we do as an organization. I've currently assisted over 2,000 individuals in that process. And that's sometimes it's really beneficial, and then there are some cases that don't fit in that sector. So there are other means that we have to look at. But the expungement clinic is one of the things that we do as an organization. The mentoring piece that we use, as Robert spoke about, I believe that you can't policy your way to reducing recidivism. The only effectual way to create this, to dismantle this barrier that people of underserved communities face with incarceration is through mentorship. And so one of my strongest beliefs is that you have to reach the men and women before they get out. So I like to title it "Getting Out Before You Get Out." So right now, what we're looking at is housing, employment, and or education. So having certain offenses limit people, but primarily what we're looking at is employment and housing opportunities for returning or reintegrating citizens. And so that's where the real challenge is.
Right. And with employment, from my research and readings, if you have a misdemeanor or felony conviction, it's very difficult to get a job or a professional license.
Yes, that's correct. And here, like in most states, say you wanted to work in the healthcare field, and we've had people who have had things as old as 40 years, unable to get those barriers removed, unable to work in that sector. And we know that healthcare is one of the few sectors that offer an opportunity for a person to maybe have health benefits as well as, some retirement contributions, just to really be able to move themselves forward in their lives and their families forward.
And
So
the other challenge you mentioned is housing. If you rent or buy a home with a misdemeanor or felony conviction, tell us about how to do that.
yeah, so primarily in order for you to obtain a house or apartment, let's just say an apartment, you're going to need a landlord or a management company that is what's considered felony friendly. So in most cases, you'll see some where they'll take a look at it, but most times often disparaged because of the said offense or alleged offense. And that person isn't able to acquire that housing in a decent community. There are some places, but oftentimes we're putting people back in the same environments that they're trying to move themselves away from. They're not safe. School systems aren't the best. So just really, really downtrodden communities are the ones that tend to allow the barrier.
Another barrier you mentioned is access to education or a license. Like, for instance, I know one of your participants, Robert Green, was trying to get a license for, I think, some construction work.
Yes.
Why is that hard, getting a license if you have a record?
Some organizations that if you are required to pass a background to be in that sector, we found that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension doesn't seal the record, or in some cases, there's a specific look back period, and some people don't meet that criteria for the look back period, or their said offense or alleged offense is egregious in nature, and so people, that's kind of like an automatic disqualifier.
And that's the piece I want to highlight, because I don't think myself and colleagues in the sector that I work in truly understand how all these barriers together make it feel like it's an impossibility.
Yeah.
But you and your organization are making it possible. Tell me about a win that you had recently with someone.
So I actually just had one of the young men just finish a cohort, and he was able to, because he did so well inside of that cohort, he was able to gain employment with that organization, and he now is one of the people helping or supporting to train the men that are taking the training. Um, there have been so many. I've had. Uh, People who have actually gained their expungement, after fighting this issue for 20, 30 years and being able to move forward. I think that brings tears to my eyes personally, because I know how hard it's been or daunting it's been for them. And to not have that visible. And we're talking about people who are middle age, they're no longer.
It's almost like they gained an aspect of their freedom back and dignity back, and they fought for it for years.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most correct analogy, because if I could play some of those tapes for you, that, conversations that I've had with people, you just don't know what that means. Even the people right now that we had a pilot pardon clinic. And so we have people that are participating in that, and they are at the part where they're going to be going before the see people, the hearing people, and just the excitement. It hasn't happened, but just the excitement of knowing that it could happen, knowing that that's possible for you, that you can demonstrate that you are more than what you've done, that you are a person and you are trying to move forward in your life. And I think that's really what they want to see. We have to remember that these are our neighbors. So what type of neighbor do you want? And so,
and it's important. It's important to just really lean into that these are people, and there's got to be some humanity in how we welcome them into their community or our communities, as opposed to having them as outliers and having all these obstacles that are impossible to get through.
Right now, economically, the state of Minnesota requires a single person to earn about $80,000 a year. So someone just seeking a minimum wage job is still going to be far, far below the poverty line. But at least they'd be having some momentum. They'd be able to, provide food for their families. One of my young men has a 2-year-old daughter that he's, highly engaged in her life. He's being a father and being able to provide for her, but he does that on a very low wage. And so getting the training, having access to the training, and being able to get there means everything to him, So it's important that people realize that these aren't people who are looking for handouts. These are people who are saying, I just want another chance. They probably turned down a handout.
No, but let's stay on that, because when you said these aren't people that are looking for handouts, they just want a chance, an opportunity. I think that is so true. And I want to say that for the group of people that you help, but I think that's also true for people in color in general, but especially for this group. And it's important to shine a light on that, because I think most Americans just don't understand all the obstacles, and they just think, well, a person can come out of the criminal justice system and resume life easily. It's their fault that they haven't gotten where they should be.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions ever told. There are a lot of systems, and you and I understand the systemic barriers that are in play to make sure that Black and brown people in this country receive harsher penalties for the same crimes, or even a lesser offense oftentimes. And the collateral consequences to that lengthy incarceration it's unfathomable. People lose housing, connections to relationships that might offer a little bit of stability.
It's unfathomable also because the cost of incarceration, I believe, It is over 80 billion per year now. And that is really something that other countries do not do. And they don't incarcerate at the same rate as our country. We incarcerate at 6 to 7 times the rate of any other country on the planet.
That's correct. And unfortunately, about 6.1% of all Black men are dealing with this. Of a population that's 13.7%. So when we're looking at compared to 1 in 17 um, Caucasian males or non-African American males versus 1 in 3 African American males, we have to take a look at it.
We
can't
do.
just say that. Yeah, we can't just say that that doesn't exist.
Let's pivot to you, Robert, because I want to stay on the theme of mentoring and some of the challenges that you faced. Talk about a little bit of the things that went well.
Within the whole mentoring process, things that went well is like um, it basically helped me like learning society again. He gave me different outlets into like employment and different opportunities and things like that. Because before getting out of prison, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how everything was gonna be. So getting in contact with Devore kind of just helped me like figure everything out. Not figure everything out, but figure most things out. Just different resources he leaded me to.
And tell me a little bit about employment and housing. Were there challenges around that?
Employment is very hard to find. It's a lot of jobs out here, but a lot of jobs won't take you if you have a messed up background. So I've been struggling with that actually since I've been out finding employment and things like that. But um, him and Shamika actually helped me getting certified in construction, OSHA 10. So that helped me a lot. But I'm still looking for employment because it's hard without a messed up background. Housing too. Everything is it's just hard to find things when people do the little background search and it comes back. It's hard.
And I hear you, and I congratulate you on getting the certification. That's really impressive. I want to pivot to Shamika. Why don't you take me through a little bit of your experience? Because I understand that you're a part of the clinic, and tell me about the challenges you faced and how you addressed them.
Yes, so the clinic part that I'm a part of is I'm actually going through the pardon um program with DeVort. And currently I received a letter from the clemency and now I'm just awaiting my appointment with them to see if I could be pardoned and clear my record. But when I first went through my ordeal, I went through a situation of it was actually the boyfriend of mine who had spanked my child. And then Child Protective Services came after my entire household. And so, because of the boyfriend running at the time, the lawyer had told me that I have to take one for the team and told me to take this case. Um,
When for the team does, do you mean pleading guilty to an offense?
yep, to plead guilty to the offense. So, I didn't know anything, at the time. I was just trying to, I didn't know anything about law, anything like that. And so I pleaded to an offense that I did not do. Um, and that's when I had the sentencing of the 65 days jail time with work release. And at the time, I was working as a PCA with children with autism, and they let me know that they had to fire me from my job because of the offense. I found myself after that time losing my housing. I was homeless, uh, selling what I could sell like on the street. I would hustle, um, local artist CDs in the, to help them to promote their music, just to make gas money. Um, and it was very, very difficult for me. I tried to go to Orlando, Florida for an AmeriCorps position, only to get hired at it was a women's shelter. And soon as they ran the background, I had to not, be able to take the employment. And
Understood.
so I was homeless for about
Let me just
two
ask.
years.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
my apologies. Let me just ask this question because I
Mm-hmm.
realized I didn't ask this before, and you all can tell me if you feel comfortable sharing. What were the offenses that we're talking about for you, Shamika, and then Robert?
Okay, so for mine, it was called aiding and abetting malicious punishment of child.
And was that a misdemeanor or a felony?
It was a it went down to a gross misdemeanor. Hmm.
And Robert?
Well, I actually had two charges. My first one was first degree aggravated robbery, and then my second one was felon in possession of firearm.
And Robert, take us through what happened with you. What do you think was the pivotal point for you in terms of working with your defense attorney? Take us through it.
Um, Basically, I don't know how to explain it. Like, um, I thought the best of it. Like, I actually caught my first case, my robbery with a group of people, and
And how old were you at that time?
I was when I caught my robbery, I had just turned 18.
Mm.
So I had caught my robbery with a group of people, thinking that it wasn't going to be that much like anything because it was my first charge, juvenile, everything. It was my first time being incarcerated. So basically, my defense attorney was telling me worst they're going to do is probation, blah, blah, blah. So like, okay, but I still want to fight it. I'm with a group of people. I don't think they don't have no evidence. But then evidence started coming out that my co-defendants actually pointed me as doing everything. So I ended up losing that case and being sentenced to 3 years of probation. And then a while after that, I had got caught with another firearm, and as soon as that happened, it was like mandatory prison time. And at the time I got caught with the firearm, I was 19. Was 19 at that time, so at that time I went straight to prison from there.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I wanted also ask a question about family because we talked about housing and employment a little bit, but we haven't talked about how this impacted your families. And I understand, Robert, you have a daughter.
Yes, ma'am. I was actually when I actually got sent away to do my prison time, my girlfriend was 4 months pregnant with my daughter. So I wasn't there for the birth. I wasn't there for the first birthday, the second birthday, none of that. So it actually affected my daughter a lot, not having her dad in her life for the first 2 years of her life. And it impacted my girlfriend because she had to raise our daughter by herself first 2 years of her life. It impacted my mother, my sisters. I'm the only male in my family, so when I go away, it hurts everybody. So
And
yeah,
let me ask, how old are you, Robert?
I'm 22 now.
Very young.
Yeah, still young. Yep.
You have your whole life ahead of you, and I applaud you for taking these steps with Pathways to True Freedom. Let me pivot back to Devord, and then I'm going to come right back to you, Robert and Shamika. Devord, I want to talk about your clinic and what you think you would like to see as to the future to really scale it.
So our work primarily will be scaled by the ability to have landlords and jobs that are truly felony friendly. A lot of people have that disclaimer, but oftentimes will frown on certain felonies. The higher level felonies, I'm sure as you're aware of an attorney, People oftentimes will look at the gross misdemeanors, but when you start seeing the aggravated charges and those things, that makes it really hard. And then housing, a direct resource to housing. It's not just so much the subsidized housing; it is just having access that removes those barriers. If I am reintegrating, I don't have credit. Oftentimes, people don't have credit. Not only do they not have resources, but they don't have the most essential component, which is a lot of these landlords. You need to meet the financial obligation, you need to meet the credit obligation, and then the background. So there are just so many layers to that. So I think for us, just having adequate resources to get people to housing that is, felony friendly, true felony friendly resources, getting people the tools that they need. You've met Ms. Marshall in our organization. She provides like things like training for resumes. A lot of men are coming out, they don't have the resumes. So we do workshops, those types of things, provide opportunity for the people to get in front of people and be prepared when that opportunity presents itself. So,
Do you think funding is another resource that you need more of?
I think funding is probably the largest resource because, of course, it allows us to, operate, and
Right.
if we can't operate, it doesn't open the doors for people who are returning. And we do a lot of work. Currently, I've worked with over 2,000 individuals seeking expungement clinics and processes of expungement or set aside just to be able to remove those barriers. And oftentimes, the despair that we see from not having, just someone who's able to get there. Imagine someone catching a bus to an expungement clinic and only having enough bus fare to get there, but can't get home because they just really want to get this thing behind them.
The issue about how to scale is something I think about a lot, and usually you need data to get more funding
Yeah.
to scale, to have more participants, meaning how many people are graduating from the program and how they're doing after they graduate. If there's some that aren't doing well with the program, understanding why, and if they're doing well, understanding why, so the offerings can make sure they match the need of the people that are in the program. That's a key thing that I know that is missing all across criminal justice from the federal to the state level. No data to get money to expand. But let's put it to Shamika. Now, I know there is something that's pardon and expungement, and I don't want to get into too much of the technical legal aspects of that because we really want to just focus on how you both came back to your communities. But I know that you are going through the pardon process. Can you just kind of give us a highlights of that process?
Sure. I sat down with it was a lawyer. Her name is Nina, and she walked me through the application, asking me, what happened, um, and then being able to pull the record and go over the correct verbiage and how to structure the application. And then I had to get, I think I got like 25 signatures from my community and letters of support. And so I had about 25 letters of support that goes along with this application. And so then they submit the application. And then from there, which is the process I'm at right now, where the clemency board lets you know that they received your application, and then you await for your appointment.
Understood. I've actually represented someone seeking clemency and a pardon, so I'm a little bit familiar with that.
Mhm.
Now, let's pivot back to Robert. Robert, you mentioned that when you were working with your defense attorney, was it a public defender or was it a private defense attorney?
It was a public defender.
And you mentioned some concerns you had about the defense strategy for you individually. Can you take us through what you were thinking back then and what you thought was the problem?
Um, I just felt like my public defender, actually both of my cases, I didn't feel like my public defender was actually taking my case very serious. It's like she basically like try to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but like kind of try to like force me to just plea out to my charge and just take whatever they gave me and things like that. Like she wasn't really putting her foot forward to try to fight or anything. Like basically trying to manipulate me to just taking whatever they offer me in my case.
And that's an important thing to recognize because this is your life. And I want to highlight that sometimes you don't get the right outcome.
Yeah.
And I hear that from both of these stories. And I also hear from both these stories, there's extenuating circumstances. DeVore, like you mentioned, it's much more complex than just the act. The one topic I wanted to touch on is the public defender service and how you would like to work with them going forward. The reason why I wanted to talk about public defenders is that their work is incredibly important, but there are times when a public defender doesn't meet the needs of their client and is overwhelmed with many other cases and may even put some pressure on the client to take a plea of guilty to a charge. What would you like public defenders to understand about your work?
One of the things I'd like outside of what they need to understand is we'd like to be able to get in with the clients that are just unknowledgeable about the processes. So a lot of that is part of that barrier. If a person is not comprehending or has a low level of comprehension, they are oftentimes more likely to take a plea agreement and they don't really understand what the ramifications of that plea is. And so I'd like to see organizations like myself and other community leaders advocating in the courtrooms, just as an interpreter would. And listen, I have to make sure that there's a functional understanding of what's happening in this process. And I'm here to champion with that lawyer to make sure that this client receives fair and equitable treatment under the law. And so that's what I'd really like to see. But I'd like to see that there is an opportunity more pro bono services offered to people of color, and they're not just overwhelming the public defender's offices. Because if you take a guy who has 100 cases and has maybe 2-3 days to prepare for someone's trial or a day to prepare for someone's trial, they don't even know the client, and it's almost oftentimes hard to give proper representation if you don't adequately can speak to the person or the character of the person.
Right.
So,
And part of this is also the responsibility of prosecutors. There's some prosecutor offices, for instance, that have reentry bureaus. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, which is the office I used to work at, has one. And they, meaning prosecutors, also need to be a part of the commitment to make things better and more equitable. And it's something that I don't think a lot of prosecutors really understand necessarily all the intricacies of the collateral consequences that are really profound when someone pleads guilty to a crime. And whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, it's something that I hope more prosecutors become aware of, all the negative collateral consequences and all the challenges that we just discussed about coming back to the community.
I would love to see assessments, mental health assessment screenings. I know that we have some states that are active in mental health court, but those numbers are small. And so to expand those, to give people an opportunity to understand that they are not only capable of interpreting what's going on, but also have representation to say that, hey, there might be a misdiagnosis here. This person might not need prison, but they might need treatment. They might need something a little bit more adequate. So I work with the prosecutor's office as well doing expungement. So I give big ups to them because it's a tough job. You have to protect the law, the fairness of the law, and you have to make sure that there's a deterrent in place. But also there should be a level of what's considered fair and equitable punishment for the
Exactly. Now, what I want to do next is pivot to today and the future. Shamika, what would you like to see for your life going forward?
Okay, so what I would like to see going forward is one, to get that pardon. I am literally every day just waiting for them to say yes to that pardon and just celebrate because this has been a long journey. Definitely my family has been impacted. You know, my son had to go into the foster care system, but he's out now. But still, you know, and just to put this behind us. We've also had counseling, went through counseling. So we've worked on those type of things, but just to have that record just removed would definitely be a great, great win for my family and everyone who was impacted with this, not just me.
And I'm hearing in your voice the need to be free fully.
Yes, yes.
I think we may have lost Devord, but if he comes back, I will ask him what he thinks he would like to see for the future. But what I will do now is pivot back to, oh, we have Devord, we lost Robert. Okay, Devord, why don't you take us through what you would like to see for your organization over the next 3 years, briefly?
I would like to see resources allocated. Currently, there are very little resources allocated. I in transition, there was another young man here who needed something as simple as a bus card. You know, when you think about simplicity, with a person who has zero means of funding, but his only ability to move forward is to be able to get to a training, and the training is several miles away, and he doesn't have the allocation of a bus card. Someone with influence might say, "Oh, well, that's his problem. Go get a job." If it's that simple, that would be the solution. But oftentimes it's not that simple. So, what I would like to see is resources that would be directed towards not just large scale organizations that, collect data or, um, work in in policy, but to organizations that are boots on the ground that
Oh,
actually do the work. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Let me interject there because I think that's an important thing I want to highlight. Getting grant funding, state, federal, foundation funding to organizations on the ground who are implementing the work with people that are actually connected or formally connected to the criminal justice system, your organizations. I think that's something that's extremely important as opposed to all the money going to a think tank, for instance, but
Right.
not coming to an organization like yours.
Yeah, and we have direct need as well as direct impact, because we all know that for every one person that I work with, there are four people attached to that one person who, unfortunately, receive collateral consequences or lack of resources to mom, dad, nephew, son, daughter, whoever's trying to move forward in this space. And a lot of times that further ensues the loss of hope. If I'm putting my best foot forward, and basically at times we just tell people, hey, you got to stay strong, you got to keep moving. They kind of don't see that, and so having resources allocated, people like yourself doing the work to bring national attention to this need is hugely a win, and I believe that they will come about. Resources will, but it's just too widely dispersed and not making enough impact in the smaller silos of this problem. So I'd
And
like to see everyone receive an opportunity to move forward and build equity in their lives. And so that's what we represent.
you mentioned the collateral consequences, how this impacts a whole family, not
Yeah.
just one person. And Tamika, why don't you take us through what you would like going forward with, I know you talked about the pardon process and what you like for that, getting the pardon, but ideally, what in your mind would be the ideal situation for your family, not just yourself, but you and your family in the future? And then we'll close out.
Okay, I definitely would like to see, um, I would say not so much as my family as just our community in general. I meet a lot of people, even in my line of work, who needs a second chance and needs a job. At least having a job to be able to take care of themselves. But as soon as these employers see their record, they don't want to hire them. Just on a whole entire global scale is for these employers to either open up their hearts or whatever it is that they need to do. I know that in Minnesota, they may have some sort of bond, so they may get a tax break or something, just something, some sort of program where they will give these offenders, people that are justice impacted, these second chances. And then also for our community to be educated more. You asked how I navigated my situation. I studied above what my situation was. I couldn't get an apartment myself in my name with a record. So I studied about CPNs and
What's
owning your CPNs, like owning your own business LLCs, where you can get an apartment in a LLC, right? Navigating those
very
spaces.
creative?
Yeah, navigating. So I've succeeded in navigating those spaces. Studying helped me to stay alive. And yeah, so
Well, let me
that's what I
say
would like
this.
to see, just our education.
Thank you, Shamika. Let me say this. I applaud your creativity and your grit for your son as well as for your family in our community. And also, Devord, I want to thank you for your purposefulness. You have to do this work because it is either a calling or your what I call is God's work.
Mhm.
Yes, yes.
And I
Yeah.
Yeah.
support.
You can find me, DeVoreJAllen at .com for community health side, or you can find me at www.pathways-to-truthfreedom.com. And both of those are direct links to me and what I do in the community and how we serve. So I'm excited. Thank you for taking the time and reaching all the way down here to us in Minnesota. Allison, we love the work that you do. We always support all champions of the movement because it truly takes a village to get this voice heard.
It takes a village. It is a commitment that both you and I have made. I think we're both doing this work because we view it as our calling
Yes,
in something that we view as a labor of love. And to learn more about the work I'm doing with prosecutor offices, please go to www.reformagents.com. Thank you both for your time and your dedication to this work.
you are welcome. Thank you
Thank
for having us and highlighting these initiatives. So
Yes,
Take good
thank
care,
you.
everyone.